Welcome to the Empowered Women Show, inspiring women with small voices but big dreams to step up and fulfill their extraordinary potential. And now your host, Casey Lightbody.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Women Show. I'm your host, Casey Lightbody, and I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce you to my next guest. Christine Livingston and I met a couple of years ago on an online forum, and we really connected as women entrepreneurs wanting to make a difference in the world, wanting to be able to shine the light on other women doing amazing things, and also being able to help women connect with their own unique voices. So I was thrilled that Christine agreed to be on the show tonight. A little bit of background around Christine and her experience. She started in a corporate job and then left to start her own consulting practice. And now she helps smart people figure out what they want in their life and who are in search of game-changing results, both in their businesses and their lives. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Christine Livingston this evening or this morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I'm so thrilled. You know, I've got to know you through a couple of online courses, and really we are so aligned in our values and our real desire to serve, I think, Christine. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story. I know you grew up in Glasgow. You can hear the accent, and I love it. And then you went into corporate, and you then decided to pack that all in and start your own business. And I'd love to hear the journey. Can you take us on that kind of journey of your life story? Not from really, your corporate life, and then how you decided to make the plunge into entrepreneurship.
Okay. I was working, I did a couple of big jobs for a couple of big companies. I was a human resources director for American Express, which was very nice for a very long time. I can't say it didn't have things going for it. And then I decided actually I wanted to do consulting. And I think actually at that point, I was already thinking at some stage, I'm going to work for myself.
Okay.
But I wasn't quite brave enough straight off the bat to just go for it. So I went and worked for a consulting company, believing that the consulting company would teach me how to be a consultant. And again, there was a lot that was good about it. But I think increasingly over a period of 2-3 years, I realized that what that kind of work demands wasn't who I am. It kind of required you. It had a lot of intellectual challenge. And, I was working with some fantastic organizations at the absolute core of their business. But it meant I had to be a certain person 24/7 and kind of cut out a lot of who I was from a creative point of view. Okay. Even just as a person, I kind of lost a lot of friendships. I was single at that point in time. I'd been divorced. And I just actually got to a point. In fact, it was in Cape Town during a New Year, a Christmas, New Year break. Wow. And I just actually thought, what am I doing with my life? Really? Is this how I'm going to live it out? Being in somebody else's idea of what a good job looks like. Is that really what I want? And what do I want for myself as a person, At that point, both my parents were dead. I had lost contact with a lot of friends. And I kind of just decided, actually, it's time to create my life and my work in a way that works more for me. And it took me about 6 months from there to pluck up the courage, actually, to resign and walk away. And in the beginning, I was just doing some freelance consulting till I tried to kind of get really straight about what I wanted to do. But I've never, it was deeply frightening to resign. And in fact, people challenged my judgment. People thought I was going crazy. My boss thought I was having a nervous breakdown.
I love it.
He said, look, if you need to take time off to kind of get your head straight. And I was saying, no, I actually think I feel the least crazy I've ever felt.
That's incredible. So, Christine, sorry to interrupt you there, but I just want to kind of touch on a really good point that you made, is that you made the decision when you were down in Cape Town. So I'm wondering, like, did you get to a certain, like, you'd had that feeling for a while. You mentioned that you'd wanted to start consulting and you had that idea that you wanted to consult. But what was the trigger? What was the point that you got to down in Cape Town that you decided, I've got to actually make this move. I've got to create the life that I really want to live? What was there a moment in time, or did you feel like you'd hit rock bottom? What was that really got you to switch in your mind around that?
I can really remember what kicked it off, really as if it were yesterday, to be honest. I had a really difficult boss when I was working on that project. Okay. And it was a really tough project when I was working on when I was down in South Africa. And there was a point in time where the organization was having to let go, retrench, make redundant quite a large number of its workforce. Mm-hmm. And the top management team were really kind of battling with the emotion in quite a kind of community environment of having to deliver that message. So we went through some really tough emotional times. And I offered to run a workshop for the top 150 in the organization, just to help them understand the emotional aspect, the people aspect of the business they were running.
Right.
So, and in fact, that led to kind of different decisions, but that's not the point. The point was that it took me a hell of a lot of energy to put that workshop together. Mm. You know, can you imagine holding the energy for 150 very emotional people? Mm. And I kind of was coaching 9 or 10 of my colleagues to be able to help facilitate. And the night before the workshop, I didn't sleep. I was up all night prepping. And on the morning of the workshop, I realized it was the 2-year anniversary of my divorce. I'd been divorced 2 years before.
Right.
And I sat in this hotel room, having not slept for not the first time, you know. I'd worked through the night to pull something off. And I thought, and that was when I thought, is this my life?
Is this
really?
Real?
Is this what I want for me? And it was then magnified because I actually really did a good job. The people kind of at the end of the workshop came up to me. They said, that's the most impactful thing we've done on this project. Thank you so much. And when I got back to the project room, my boss came up to me, said nothing, and gave me some negative feedback about something completely obscure that had nothing to do with the workshop. And I just thought, that's it.
That's it.
You know,
that
was really what kicked it off.
The trigger. Yeah. And so then it took you 6 months, and I totally get that whole idea of fear and how terrifying that must have been. And it's interesting that I've had a couple of conversations around quitting your job. In fact, I interviewed an amazing woman a couple of weeks ago who felt very similar. You know, she'd been working for one of the big four accounting firms and was really senior, a principal in the organization, and really made the decision that was not really what she wanted and decided to walk away from it. But it's really scary, Christine. And I think as, you know, shy, sensitive, quiet people, those kind of fears come up, I think, a lot. So my audience and our listeners today will really resonate with that. So what were the steps that you took to kind of really pluck up the courage? Like what were the action steps that you took to really, again, pluck up the courage to resign at that point?
I think over the course of 6 months, one of the things that really drove me was to set some goals for myself. So I kind of created a bit of a vision of what life beyond the resignation was going to look like, you know. And I mean, I was in South Africa at the time. It, for instance, involved moving back to London, you know, deciding that I was going to earn a certain amount of money, actually figuring out, before I set the goal, figuring out how much money I actually needed to live. Because I think I'd spent the last how many ever years in a situation where a salary was put in my bank account, and actually I was quite bad with money, I could spend it because I knew that there was another salary going to be coming along the next month, right? But when you work for yourself, you have to get a lot more savvy about what's in your bank account.
Absolutely.
And indeed how much you need. You have to become a lot more conscious about how much you will spend. And it's not about, and this was kind of part of the mindset for me. I think at first I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be poor. I'm going to be the bag lady. I'm not going to be able to afford these things I like. And it was kind of thinking, actually stop, you can have a good life. You just have to figure what budget you need to fund it. And make some decisions about whether you want this or that. Because, if you want this, it's going to mean more of the same sort of work. It was kind of making those kind of trade-off decisions for myself. And then setting goals around how much I was going to earn, how much time actually I was going to invest in work itself. The core of the work I wanted to do, because by that point I was starting to see there were some things I enjoyed, other things not so much. In a scenario where you can invent it for yourself, you do actually have the luxury of kind of getting quite ballsy and deciding you're kind of going to go after things that really light your fire and not other things.
That's so true.
So these, that was some of it.
And I think, that whole idea of actually taking responsibility for your actions probably gave you the courage, is that you had an action plan that you could follow through with at that point, right?
Yeah. I think also there was a part of me that was kind of starting to see that that it's not just me in the game. There actually is a bigger universe out there. And I didn't have to be entirely dependent on me to make things happen, that I actually had a network of friends and former colleagues who, if I just picked the phone up or sent an email, they'd be happy to have a conversation with me about this or that. It was starting to create community for myself and to create for myself the feeling that actually I don't need to do this entirely by myself, Does that make sense?
Totally. And that raises a really, really interesting point, actually, Christine, that I'd like to come back to. But before I do, I really want to touch on something else that you mentioned earlier, is that your boss, and I think this is really interesting, is that your boss thought that you were going crazy. And I know a lot of people have to deal with the naysayers. They're like, oh my goodness, you're giving up this amazing job. You have no idea. You're plunging into the unknown. You don't know what you're going to be earning. You don't know what you're going to be doing. How can you do that? You're completely crazy. And I'd love to know, what would you recommend? Because I know that's come up a lot, and especially from having run the online summit and really understanding what some of the challenges that our attendees at the summit had was. One of them was, how do you deal with the naysayers when you are trying to follow your dream? And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are around that, Christine.
I can probably answer this better from this vantage point than I could back then, because back then I was completely in it, Now my advice would be, and I think I was doing this, but I just didn't have so much determination. But I think two things. First of all, get really clear on your why. It's like, why are you going to walk away? Why are you going to work for yourself? Why are you going to create something different? What is the difference that is going to mean to you? Get really, really grounded and centered in your why. And then the first naysayer actually is yourself, okay? when you can actually get clear yourself, when you can decide for yourself, you know what, I don't care what anybody else thinks, you know, in my absolute heart of hearts, this is the right thing for me. It doesn't really matter what anybody else says because you feel quite secure in yourself, you know. And if you don't feel secure, you know, if you are still doubting yourself, you communicate that to other people. I mean, it's possible when I had the conversation with my boss, he picked up on some of my doubting. So hence, you know, he was kind of going, oh, really? Are you sure? And, you know, don't you think you're just a little tired at the moment? And
so you could probably pick up on that, right? That's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
So I, you know, first things first, just be really clear in yourself. And if you're not clear, then in your conversations, in your communications, come from the intention of being as clear as you can be. Because the other thing I've kind of subsequently realized is that the more I do that, the more I come from that place, actually the more it opens up the opportunity to other people to be who they are and come from their own place too, you know?
Absolutely. Oh, I think that's a key point, and I definitely want to dive into that more around the whole idea of keeping it real, because I think this is huge, and I'd love to touch on that. But before you do, this is something that I think it appears that you realized this really early on, Christine. And it's something that I took a while to actually get once I'd taken the plunge, and that was that whole idea of community and not doing it on your own. And so I'd love to also just understand a little bit more about that in terms of your thinking and realization that, you know, once you decided to go on your own and start your consulting business, how did you realize how important having a community and having a network was, and that being able to rely on them to answer any questions or to, you know, alleviate any of your doubts and all that kind of thing? What was the process like? Did you just, because that took me a while, I must be honest, that was it was a real, once it took me ages. I was trying to do everything on my own, and then suddenly I was like, hold on a second, I can't actually do this on my own. I need help, and I need support, and I need a network. And once I made that switch, it was like, oh my goodness, my business was a completely different place, you know. But it took me a while, so I'm just interested what your experience was with that.
I can't honestly tell you that I went through any conscious process in coming to that point. I mean, I think maybe it helped that I'd had a consulting background, or that I'd done a few years in the consulting world, because a lot of the consulting process with clients, when they get to kind of action planning, is to ask, not just what are the actions, but who will do this, and what resources will you put around this action in order to make it happen. So I think that was kind of already in my mindset.
Okay. That's
although I didn't go there to begin with, but it did dawn on me, actually, you know. I can kind of look at what I'm creating here in the same sort of way I'd advise a client to create whatever it is they're trying to put together. And I can think myself about the people and resources I can engage for myself.
It's really, it's great. It's great skill. And I think, I mean, certainly a key point in the success of any business. I really believe that. I think, Christine. So you went ahead and you launched your business. So I'd love for you to share now, you know, what your business is all about and what you're doing currently and how it's evolved over the, you know, period of time, and just give some kind of flavor around that.
Okay. So it has evolved quite a lot over a period of time. It started off, I was just primarily doing freelance consulting work. And it's kind of morphed over the years. I realized at a certain point that the thing I most enjoy doing is coaching. So both one-to-one work and working with teams or small groups, whether they're leadership teams, business teams, whatever, to kind of really make things happen. And so that is really the core of my business now. And I think too, over the years, I've gone from imagining that I needed to have lots and lots of clients, you know, that being really busy, that was what success meant, you know, being busy and having lots of clients. I've come to actually the place of for me at least, understanding that less is more, you know. Mm-hmm. So now in a year, I only will work with a small number of dedicated clients who I will work with over a long period of time, you know. So some of my clients I've been with now a year and a half, you know, it kind of ranges from a few months to a few years. And the longest, I actually have one client I've worked with for nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, and I charge maybe a little bit more than some other coaches and consultants because it's a different service. I'm not selling product. I'm not selling things. I'm selling relationship from which people achieve phenomenal results.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of quite a hard thing to grasp, but actually it's very powerful, and therefore it has a price point. And, you know, so I charge relatively well, but that does mean, you know, people get really good focused attention.
That's right.
And for me, you know, I kind of get space. You know, I'm not having to think about the thousands of clients or, you know, having to work 24/7 or. So it has a knock onto my lifestyle too. So it just really kind of feels like a great all-round win at the moment.
And, you know, and it sounds like just that you've really designed, you know, you've experimented with all sorts of things by the sounds of things and really dialed into designing a business and a life that really suits you, which is ultimately, from what I've heard, what you wanted at the end of the day when you resigned from your corporate job.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. That was why I resigned. And at steps along the way of doing my own thing, I found myself, I mean, look, I'm a perfectionist, like so many of us, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, often I want things to be right, you know, I want the accolades, I want, you know, but sometimes that takes me it takes me back in the direction of working too much, you know. And I've got to those points over the years and I've thought, hold on, this is what I walked away from. Something's not working here. What's not working? Let me tweak this or that. So along the last how many ever years I've worked for myself, I've tweak things at different juncture points. And a lot of it is about how I'm feeling myself. You know, if I start to feel the energy's not in something, or I'm feeling more tired, or I'm feeling resentful about having to do this or that, it's an indication to me that something in my business isn't working and I need to fix it. Otherwise, I may keep making money, it's not serving me, and it certainly isn't serving the people I'm working with, you know. So
that's so interesting, Christine. I'd love to touch on that a little bit more, because I think that comes certainly with experience and experimentation and really listening. So how did you become, you know, you really delved into, you know, how you feeling at that time and using that feeling as an indication that something's not working in your business, you know, and then actually making the decision to actually change or pivot or do something that's then going to become more aligned with how you want to feel, right?
Yeah.
That's really interesting point. So can you talk us through, you know, your findings around that, your realization, your, you know, your action steps around that? You know, how did you become aware of even listening to that and, you know, really taking it on board?
Well, I guess at the complete core of my business is one-to-one coaching, you know. So the kind of overt conversation is often about business, but there's a covert thing going on, which is about the person in the business and their experience of the business, how they're feeling about it, what they're thinking about it. And I think to become really good at that, I decided that I would I've done a ton of coach training, and indeed I've done a ton of both actually being a psychotherapy client and a coaching client myself. Because I really, really believe I can only ever take people where I've been prepared to go myself, you know. I can only take people to territory that I myself know, you know. So I think over the course, and I still have a coach. It's expensive, but, you know, of course I would say everybody needs a coach because that's my business, but
I totally agree with you, by the way.
But it's been through that process. I just start to become more and more aware of the things that go on in me that actually are indicators for what's going on outside me, you know. Things that maybe at an earlier point in time I wouldn't have paid attention to. Or, you know, if I'd felt uncomfortable about something, I might have come home and had a couple of glasses of wine or, you know, eaten too much ice cream or just, you know, that's life. But now if I kind of feel something's niggling, I'm curious, well, what's that about? You know, what's that about for me? What does it mean for me?
Really, really interesting. That's really interesting. Wow. And I think, you know, it's something that, again, I don't think I realized going into entrepreneurship is that what a personal journey it is. You know, really, I say entrepreneurship is the biggest personal journey you'll go on. And, you know, I really stand by that, you know, and which is why I think it's so important to have a coach. But, But Christine, I'd love to touch also, you know, we talked a little bit offline, and you've really underpinned your business around these values of keeping it real. And I'm all around integrity, authenticity, genuineness, and keeping it real as well. That's what, you know, underpins the whole Empowered Woman Revolution too. And I'd love for you to share your thoughts around keeping it real and why you've kind of used this to really underpin your business.
Okay. I mean, I think I'm always developing my business, right? I mean, I think, again, that's part of the game for people who work for themselves. You know, we're always looking for how can we do it better? How can we make it more interesting for ourselves as well as anybody else, you know? And I think over a period of a number of years, I did all kind of online courses on marketing and selling and, you know, all kind of business development stuff. And there are any number of products out there, right? About, you know, follow these 4 steps and and honestly, last year, we were both doing the review programs together, right? And last year, I just had this massive insight. It's like, it is so exhausting trying to force fit yourself into other people's process. I mean, for me, it got to the point I was feeling a bit like I was back in a job, you know?
Absolutely.
And I thought, in my own coaching work, I don't ask people to follow any definitive process that I've set for them. You know, the thing that differentiates me from, I think, a lot of other coaches is I really help people be the best of who they already are and to bring to the world the products, services, whatever, that kind of come from that place, that aren't force-fitted or logicked out or whatever. And so I kind of thought, why am I trying to force fit my business to some model? And I just kind of got really clear that at the absolute core of my business was this philosophy about keeping it real. And so I don't know, kind of going through all that process allowed me to start to articulate something that I'd taken for granted and hadn't until that point articulated.
Absolutely. And that's so true. And that's something that I go on about all the time, is really about finding your own unique voice, because really at the end of the day, you can't box yourself into the bog standard packages. And I completely agree with you around the whole idea of, I'm in the online marketing space myself. So I've seen all that kind of thing, and it's just really, it is something that can be extremely intimidating, especially for business owners just starting out or quiet business. They just don't know where to go and who to believe and what to do. And really, I mean, at the end of the day, the message that I want to get out there, which is exactly the same as yours, Christine, is really keeping it real and being able to share your own unique voice. I think it's just so important. And
yes,
because we are all so different. So it's really creating something that suits you, designing a business and life around you, and I think that's just so important.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a really bizarre thing. I got to the point last year where I was feeling like I was failing because I wasn't achieving the kind of things these programs were telling me should be possible. The hundreds of thousands of visitors to my website, or all these amazing numbers. And actually I had to kind of really stop and put all of that aside and look at the reality of my business and think and my life and think I am not a failure, I can imagine I'm a failure if I compare myself to these external things. But in the context of me and what I set out to create and what I most value and treasure and is most meaningful, oh my God, actually, my life and my business are already successful. What the
fuck? Exactly.
Let me stop trying to make it something else and play to its existing strengths. I think that was kind of part of the whole keeping it real thing for me,
Absolutely.
And then help other people kind of really get that, You don't have to be that guy that,
That's right. Exactly.
Just be you.
Just
because, the world needs you.
Exactly. I love that. So, Christine, I'd love to hear from you. You've shared with us how you've designed your business, which I love. I just want to celebrate that. Really, is that your realization that actually you are successful and you don't have to live up to all these numbers that are out there that are so intimidating for people, and really looking at, what did you want to create? At the end of the day, what did you want to create? You've created a business that you can that fits around your lifestyle. You've got amazing clients that you've been working with. I mean, the relationships that you must have formed with clients that you've been working with for 10 years. I get goosebumps just even thinking about that, And then I know that you travel heaps, so you've got this opportunity to travel when you like. I mean, really, what has that meant for you? Being a business owner and being able to create a business and life that you really love?
At times, to be really honest, it brings me to tears, I mean, again, I think there's part of the entrepreneur that's, as we said before, it's the perfectionist. It's always looking at what's not right yet. It's always looking at what else. But honestly, when I stop and I think, what did I want? Back when I quit my job, I wanted to live in London. I wanted to earn a certain amount of money. I wanted to be fit and healthy. I wanted to attract a new relationship to my life. I was single at that point. And now, so I've had my years of living in London, and now, having met the man, I'm living in the countryside, which does take a bit of getting used to. But, London's actually still on my doorstep. I earn what I need to earn. I do a lot of traveling. I have a very rich life. And I think, how lucky am I? Really, how lucky am I? Really.
That's amazing. And it really is true. I think as many ups and downs as you experience as an entrepreneur or business owner, I think that really the opportunities that it brings and the journey that you're on, really, it's so fulfilling. That's the word that I use. It's just so fulfilling, really, as I love that. Now, Christine, I want to also ask you, we mentioned there's lots of ups and downs too, and you've shared a couple with those, but and I know it's really hard to kind of pinpoint one particular one, but do you have one particular challenge that you've experienced in your your years of being a business owner that really you can share with us, that you've an obstacle that you've come across and what you've done to overcome it?
I think, I probably hinted at it just a moment ago, but I think 5 years or so ago, when I saw the internet taking off and, all these internet rock stars starting to create themselves, all these businesses that were, earn 6 figures while you sit on a beach doing nothing.
I hear you.
I did think, I thought, I'll have some of that, please, and honestly set about trying to create it. I set up a website, which in fact is now, it still exists, but it's no longer active. But I set up a website. I kind of spent a lot of time on social media. I kind of did all the things that all the marketers were telling me to do about building my numbers and, getting my list and you know what? It's not that it didn't bring in a certain amount of business, but it didn't bring in the amount of business that it promised. And also, it was taking a heck of a lot of work, It was another 24/7 kind of a job,
Yeah.
'Cause I kind of got to a point where actually the readership of my blog was superb. It was really up there. But keeping it up there by itself, whilst behind the scenes I'm still kind of meeting with my coaching clients and doing all that kind of stuff, was exhausting. Never mind starting to create product,
Absolutely.
And I just kind of got to a point, I thought, this isn't working. I was burning out on it,
Yeah.
And it felt like a very public failure because, I had created a lot of readership. And for a long time, I just didn't quite know what to do.
Yeah. So what were your lessons learned from that, Christine? Like, you went, it sounds, that you really consciously made the decision to put that aside and actually to focus on your one-on-one clients.
Yeah.
And really not get, caught up in that whole shiny objects, syndrome, and just to really follow your values and really, connect with how you wanted to create the business. But what was the moment that you decided that, and then how did you use that going forward? Because I can see that happening to lots of people too, is that when they're first starting out, they don't know anything. And then obviously those internet marketers who are really, as you call them, rock stars, who are online, sharing their massive, massive successes. And there's just such a gap between someone starting out and these amazing people. And so it's natural for them to kind of get drawn. Like I've been there. I'm exactly the same, And it's really, what advice would you share around that? What were the lessons that you learned having been there, done that, and come out the other side? What would you share with our readers listening today?
I think one of the big insights for me is that there are different kind of entrepreneurial businesses. There are at least two that I can determine. One is the kind of business that maybe somebody like Vanderchuck, or however you pronounce his name, espouses, right? The complete hustle 24/7. Because really, if you're prepared to commit that amount of time and effort, you probably can make a heap of money and do some very, very successful stuff. If that's the kind of business you want, go for it, right? Go for it. But I think I realized for myself that's not actually the kind of business, in fact, that it is congruent with who I am. And actually the kind of business, the label I would put on it is a lifestyle business. Right? It's a good business. It makes money. It's professional. It delivers results. It's very satisfying. It's very rewarding, and it involves other people other than me. But it does not demand all of my energy all of the time in a way that compromises my relationships and some of my other interests. It gives me breathing space. It allows me to travel. So my advice really is to think carefully about what kind of business you want to create as an entrepreneur. Are you going to be a one-man band? Is it, are you going to be, there are people too, I think, that are very happy just, for instance, as I did in the beginning, to freelance, in a way that's a kind of a business, you're kind of, you're turning up and you're doing jobs that other people kind of scope out for you. And that's okay too. There's that kind of business. So maybe there are three. I'm kind of making this up, as you can hear.
Oh no, that's great. I love that.
But that's okay. That suits some people, and that's fine. Then there's the kind of lifestyle business where it's more about who you are and what's really important for you, but actually it kind of thinks also about what else is in your life. And then there's the real kind of, performance. Maybe that's the wrong term, but I think you know what I mean, It's the kind of business that's gonna maybe ultimately make millions, but it's going to demand a different set of things.
Yeah, and that's what I think that's an interesting point too, Christine. I think not everyone wants to earn millions and millions of dollars. Some people are happy with earning maybe a couple of 100,000 profit, and they're going to live really comfortably, and it's designed around a lifestyle that you really want to live. So I think that's the big difference that I think is really getting clear on what do you really want? Again, it comes back to what do you really want? Do you want to have an organization where you CEO managing 25 people and turning over 20 or 30 million, or do you want a little home-based business that you can be flexible around your children or your lifestyle or your travel, and it's making enough money that you can live comfortably, really.
Exactly. And a couple of things from that. If it's the latter sort of business, don't imagine it needs to be a small, humble little business, just because you're not going to work all the hours or 5 days a week or what have you. Don't sell yourself short. Don't imagine that you're suddenly less than because that's how it is. You have all the skill, you have all the capability. You are just making a conscious choice to exercise your professionalism in a different way.
That's right.
That I think has been a kind of important thing that I've held on to. And again, it goes back to that conversation we were having earlier about what's your why. I think I can lose track of that sometimes. But when you bring yourself back to, hold on, why am I doing this? what are my goals,
Exactly. Absolutely.
And I mean, we can all as well at times compare ourselves to people in our lives or people we know online, that we imagine are doing better than us, that we feel, oh, we need rather to do this so that we can, keep up with them. But we don't. The only person we have to really keep up with is ourselves, And the more we do things that are in alignment with who we are, actually, the better life goes anyway. That's really been my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Christine. I love it. So what is exciting? What's plans for you now in terms of where you're going with your business?
Well, I'm kind of actually doing more of the same right now. So when we finished doing Review last year, I kind of developed a creed, which I put into my business site and indeed take into my business work. So, it kind of forms the frame for blog posts now. So I really am taking the ethos of my keeping it real thing and bringing it more to life in my business. So doing more value added things, putting on little workshops from time to time, at no added cost for people who are in my existing client base and or potential network, So that's feels really rewarding and very enriching. I think the other thing that's new and exciting for me personally is that I've allowed myself in the last few months to start writing. And I don't just mean blog writing, I mean creative writing, which has been a desire of mine for years, but actually something I've never really let myself do. So, having created a life that has space, I suddenly think, why am I not writing? And
I love that. Wow, that's incredible.
So instead of doing sales and marketing classes, I'm doing creative writing classes now. And I just...
That's so exciting. I love that. I love hearing that. It's like, I was actually just chatting to another friend of mine, and she was an artist actually that gave it up 20 years ago because she followed the status quo and got a job and really let go of her creativity, Christine. And she's only recently reclaimed that, and she started working on her art again. And it's incredible, just again, that level of fulfillment and satisfaction and just honoring what you really want. The enrichment that it brings to your life, I think, is really what I'm hearing, in that conversation, and the same as the conversation that I had with my friend.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting because what I've sort of reflected for myself is that, and I think, I mean, this may be true of most people, but it's certainly true of a lot of us who have taken this more entrepreneurial path. I think that we are very diverse people and we can have many interests, but the kind of more corporate business world tends to want to only see us through one lens and gets a little confused if we say that we do this and we do that, But what's been amazing for me actually is because I've started to actually just be on. I mean, I feel as if I've kind of come out of the closet on it, But I feel as if I've started to actually share with. I'm sharing with you, and actually, I'll share with anybody that wants to listen that this is what I'm doing. And what's been fascinating is the reaction from some of my clients or some of my prospects. I had a conversation with a woman last week who's, like board director of a very large organization. And my and bad me judging her this way, actually, to start with. But my impression of her had always been that she was a very focused businesswoman, highly successful, but very focused on her business. Anyway, we were having this conversation, and toward the end, it became a little bit more personal. And she said to me, "So what are you up to these days? Is business good? Are you busy?" And I said, "You know what? I'm as busy as I want to be." And I don't know if I told you, but I'm also doing some creative writing these days. She said, "Really?" So I start to share with her. She said, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous."
Oh, wow.
She said, I was, when I was 17, I won a prize for creative writing at school, and it's what I wanted to do. But, in those years, everybody told me, well, you'll never make money from being an artist. And so, I went to university and studied business, and here I am, and writing. Oh my God, so. So then we ended up having this conversation about possibly creating a workshop for writers in suits, people that actually.
How cool would that be?
Yeah. But you just never know. You see, this is I think plays to my thing about, when you kind of get clear yourself about something, you can be open about sharing it, and you don't know where it goes. You allow people to take it wherever they want to take it,
Absolutely.
And so something much more creative comes to the fore. So I might do that workshop, yeah.
You see, a complete master of your own destiny. I love it. Oh, Christine, it's been fantastic. I've loved every moment of chatting to you. I'd love now to dive into our lightning round. I just have 3 really short questions to wrap up the interview, which has been absolutely incredible. My first question is, do you have a favorite business quote or life quote, for that matter, that you live by every day? And why?
Well, it's not a business quote. It actually comes from the Tao Te Ching. And it goes like this. It says, "Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself?" And I just love that, because I think so much of business is very driven and decisive and logical, and we can want to control things and think that only we can figure things out. And actually, sometimes if we just sit and don't try to logic things out, things have a very interesting way of sorting themselves out, or actually the answer kind of gets downloaded by itself, and it's how magical is that? So, that's kind of top. That's my kind of key thing.
I love it. I'm gonna put that in the show notes for everyone. Share that. I love that quote. I think it's so it's lovely. Love it. So and I think really it's just that whole idea of taking that moment. I mean, we could get into the whole conversation of actually taking moments to actually sit and meditate and actually, just be. I think there's so much that we can take out of just being. But anyway, that's enough for another whole conversation, not a lightning round, right? Christine, my other one is there are so many amazing women out there. Do you have one particular woman that really stands out, that inspires you, and why as well?
I'm having a mental block. I did think of this before the conversation. I can't remember the woman's name. She's currently the leader of the Scottish National Party in Scotland. Okay. Now, I'm not a particular Scottish nationalist, so I don't have any flag to fly about Scottish independence or anything like that. Nicola. And I'm sorry, I'm having a complete mental blank on her name. But she inspires me just because of She appeared on the political scene in Scotland and indeed in the UK. And she's her own woman.
Okay.
What I like about her is, quite aside from her politics, she's her own woman. She doesn't take any bullshit. She says things as they are. And she can be quite disarming because she's not like, a lot of women you see in politics and indeed in business who think they have to kind of be little men in order to get. She's a woman in a very kind of masculine world, and she's managed to engage a heck of a lot of people around her, I think, because of, the way she turns up. So I think she's quite interesting just to.
I love that. And I think that leads us on to really my next question, actually, around showing up as yourself, as a woman in a man's world, which must be really difficult to, or maybe it takes a lot of courage, I don't know, but really, again, Christine, the question that I've got and that I ask all my guests is, what do you think is the single most important barrier that's really holding women back from being successful entrepreneurs?
Honestly, I think it's personal confidence. I read a lot about discrimination, and I'm sure there's a heck of a lot of discrimination still out there. I've kind of seen it. I've experienced it, but actually, if you have a certain amount of personal confidence, if you actually don't give a shit about it and you keep going anyway, you'll achieve what you want to achieve. So, first step, decide you're going to bust through it, really.
Oh, absolutely. And it's incredible how many of my guests have actually answered that exact same question the exact same way. We are all getting in our own way. It's like, get out of our own way, for goodness sake. Exactly. Just take that next step,
Exactly. Don't wait for anybody else to give you permission. Just get in there. Just go,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can do it in a really quiet, gentle way as well, Christine, I think that's the other thing that we really, as you've proved, we talked about, big launches if we're introverts and, doing it quietly, you can still be as powerful and as inspiring and as impactful in your own quiet way, So I think as long as you just take that step and get out of your own way, then you're really made,
Absolutely. I think that's right, and I think actually that can be quite disarming. I think that's one of the things that sets that. Nicola Sturgeon, her name is, the Scottish National Party leader. I think she's actually quite introverted. And I think that's part of the reason that she's so disarming, because she's not rah-rah. She's not kind of look at me. She's not, in everybody's face. But she turns up from actually a quiet, centered place, and she blows people away with, like 2-line insights. It's incredibly powerful, and I think the world needs more women like us who are able to do that and come from that place.
Oh, Christine, what a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much. Now, where can everybody find you online? I'd love to share the links in our show notes.
They can find my website, www.livingstonconsulting.co.uk. I'm on Twitter and Facebook. These are the two social media sites I do most hanging out on. So if people want to connect with me there, then please do.
That's fantastic. I'll be sure to share those on the show notes, Christine. But honestly, it has been such a pleasure. It's been so insightful chatting with you. We're almost on an hour, which is incredible. And it's just been fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your stories, your ups and your downs. It's been really, really inspiring for me. So thank you.
It's my huge pleasure. I've enjoyed every minute too. Thank you, Casey.
Take care.
And you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And that wraps up another episode of the Empowered Woman Show. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And if you have a chance and you enjoyed this episode, it would really mean the world to me if you would head on over to iTunes and leave me an honest rating and review of the show. That way, you'll help boost rankings and really shine the spotlight on these amazing women guests. You'll find the link in the show notes over at www.empoweredwomenrevolution.com. Thank you so much and see you next time.